Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. We're diving into an incredibly interesting topic, the differences between British and American English accents. If you're trying to learn English, one of the things that can throw you off is all the variety in accents.
Absolutely. There's no one correct accent in English, but there are definitely distinct differences between the British and American accents. And that's not even considering all the variations within each country. For today, we're going to focus on the most common British and American accents, what they sound like, and what you need to know when it comes to pronunciation, vocabulary, and rhythm.
That's right. And the best part is, by the end of this episode, you should have a clearer understanding of how to navigate these differences and even pick up some tips if you're aiming to sound more like a native speaker of either accent.
So let's start with the basics. The first thing you'll notice when listening to British and American accents is that there are different sounds for the same letters. Take the R sound, for example.
Right. In most British accents, the R at the end of words isn't pronounced. For example, in a word like car, a British English speaker would say something like ka instead of car.
Exactly. That's what's called a non-rhotic accent. British English tends to drop the R sound unless it's followed by a vowel. So father becomes vatha and butter becomes but-ea.
On the other hand, American English accents are rhotic, meaning the R is pronounced strongly. So car sounds like car, and father has a definite R sound at the end.
It's a really clear distinction, right? And if you've ever tried to mimic a British accent as an American, you've probably noticed how easy it is to exaggerate the R sound because we're used to pronouncing it all the time.
Yes, another difference is in how we pronounce vowels. This is something that can really change the feel of the accent. For example, the short sound in words like dance or bath. In most British accents, you'll hear a longer A sound like da, ents, or bath. It's kind of like the vowel is drawn out.
In American English, those words sound more like dance and bath with a flat A sound. This is one of the first things you'll notice when you listen to British and American accents side by side. It's pretty wild how one small change in vowel sound can make the accent sound completely different.
That's such a good point. And then there's the O sound. In words like hot and lot, British English tends to use a rounder, almost more open O, while American English tends to use a flatter sound. So you might hear hot pronounced more like hot in British English and more like hat in American English.
Right, and this one is pretty obvious if you listen closely. In the UK, people might say pot more like pot, whereas in the US, it's more of a flat pot. The difference in vowel pronunciation really gives each accent its distinct flavor.
I think one of the hardest things for non-native speakers is learning to hear the subtle changes in pronunciation like these. But once you start listening closely, they become easier to pick up.
Definitely. And another difference comes in the rhythm and intonation of the language. British English has a kind of sing-song quality to it. Intonation rises and falls a lot more than in American English.
Yeah, British English often sounds a bit more formal and even melodic at times, especially in RP, which stands for Received Pronunciation, or what some might call the Queen's English. American English, by contrast, tends to have a more even, flat rhythm. There's less of the up and down melody you might hear in British English.
That's a great point. And there's something else to consider too, stress patterns. In American English, we tend to stress the first syllable of many words. For example, advertisement in American English is pronounced advertisement, with emphasis on the second syllable. But in British English, you'd often hear it stressed on the first syllable, a divertissement.
That's right, Mark. And there are a ton of other words where the stress pattern changes between the two accents. It's like the flow of the sentence changes depending on where the stress is placed. This can sometimes make words sound almost unrecognizable when switching between the two accents.
Absolutely. And if you're learning English, these differences can be tricky because they not only affect pronunciation, but also the way the language feels. If you're trying to sound more British or American, you have to adapt to these subtle rhythm and stress changes as well.
Now, let's get into the vocabulary differences. This is another huge area where British and American English differ. Words that might seem completely normal in one accent are sometimes completely foreign in the other. For example, in British English, people use the word biscuit to refer to what Americans would call a cookie.
Yes, and it's important to note that this can be a bit confusing if you're switching between the two. You might offer someone a biscuit in the UK and get a confused look from an American. Conversely, chips in British English are fries in American English.
And then there's boot and trunk. In the UK, boot refers to the space in the back of a car, while in the US, we call it a trunk. There are also lifts in the UK, which we call elevators in the US.
Exactly. And you'll find that these vocabulary differences go beyond just a few words. They also affect entire phrases. For instance, in American English, we'd say, I'm going to the bathroom, while in the UK, it's more common to say, I'm going to the loo.
Or holiday in the UK, which is the same as vacation in American English. So if you're ever traveling between countries or talking to people from different places, you'll need to keep track of these differences.
For sure. And speaking of differences, let's dive a bit into how these accents are formed. It's actually really interesting how geography, history, and even social class play a role in shaping how people speak in both countries.
That's right. In the UK, you have so many different accents depending on the region you're in, from Cockney in London to Scouse in Liverpool, and even accents that sound vastly different within just a few miles of each other. The UK has a huge variety of regional accents, and some of them can be quite difficult for even native speakers to understand.
In contrast, American English has its own regional accents, but they're not as extreme as in the UK. Of course, you've got Southern, New York, and Midwestern accents, just to name a few. But for the most part, American English tends to be a little more uniform across regions compared to British English.
Yeah, and accents in the UK have a lot of historical roots. Many of the different ways people speak can be traced back to class and social status, with some accents, like RP, being considered more prestigious and others being seen as more working class accents.
Exactly. And in the US, you have the influence of immigration and a mix of different languages that shaped how American English developed. The influence of European languages, particularly French and German, helped shape the accents in different regions of the US.
It's fascinating when you start thinking about how language and accents evolve over time. These accents didn't just pop up overnight, they've been shaped by centuries of history and culture.
Absolutely. And understanding the roots of these accents can give you a deeper appreciation for the language. But in terms of practical language learning, you'll probably encounter British and American accents in films, TV shows, music, and even in conversation with people from different parts of the world.
Right. So let's talk about how to improve your accent, whether you want to sound more British or American. The first thing I'd suggest is listening actively. Whether you're watching a British TV show or listening to an American podcast, pay close attention to how the vowels and consonants are pronounced. Are,
Yes, listening and mimicking is key. Try to repeat phrases exactly how you hear them. Start slowly and focus on each word, then gradually pick up the pace as you get more comfortable. This helps you not only with pronunciation, but also with rhythm and stress patterns.
and of course, if you can find a native speaker to practice with, that's one of the best ways to improve. But if not, there are tons of resources online, YouTube videos, language exchange apps, even social media, where you can hear both accents and practice mimicking them.
One final tip. Don't worry too much about perfection. Everyone has an accent, and there's no right or wrong way to speak as long as you're clear. Just have fun with it.
That's the best part, Mark. The more you enjoy the process, the easier it will be. Keep practicing, and soon enough, you'll feel confident switching between the accents or even picking up some of your own unique style along the way.
So, whether you're leaning toward British or American, or maybe a little bit of both, the most important thing is to keep speaking and practicing.
Exactly. Thanks for listening today. We hope you found this discussion helpful. And remember, the world of accents is rich and full of fun, so embrace the variety.
We'll see you next time. Happy learning.
Bye. Now, dear my friends, we are going to listen to some practical conversations between an American guy and a British guy. Let's notice the differences about the accents.
You know what's funny? When I first visited London, I seriously thought people were making up words just to confuse me.
Oh, come on, it can't be that bad.
No, really. I walked into a shop and asked where the bathroom was, and the lady looked at me like I was crazy.
You should have said loo or toilet. Bathroom sounds too fancy for public places in the UK.
See, that's exactly what I mean. In the US, bathroom is just normal. We don't say toilet unless we're being super direct.
Yeah, we're pretty straightforward with that, but I do understand. When I visited New York, someone said restroom, and for a second I thought they were asking for a place to take a nap.
Haha, and then there's spelling. Like you guys write color with a you favor, honor, neighbor. What's with all the extra letters?
Excuse you, we invented the language. You guys just trimmed it down. I mean, organised with an S just looks nicer, doesn't it?
Maybe, but we're all about efficiency. Less letters, more meaning. Like theater instead of theater, center instead of center.
But some British people feel American English is a bit robotic, too direct. You tend to say exactly what you mean.
That's true, but I feel British English has so many layers. Like you're trying not to say things too directly. Lots of indirect language.
Yes, we do that on purpose. It's part of our culture. Being polite, not too pushy. Like instead of saying, close the window, we might say, would you mind terribly if we just shut that window a tad?
See, in America, someone would just go, hey, close the window.
Exactly. That difference in tone is huge. It even affects business meetings, you know. Brits might say, we'll consider that option, but what they really mean is, no, we won't.
Oh man, that's confusing. In the US, we'll consider it actually means we're still deciding.
Cultural codes, right? Also, pronunciation is a big one. For example, you guys say schedule like schedule, and we say schedule.
Yeah, and aluminum. You guys add an extra ion aluminium. I still can't get used to that.
There are so many of those, like garage, advertisement, vitamin, even tomato. I say tomato, you say tomato.
Haha, yeah. And you say can't like can't. Sometimes it sounds like a swear word to us.
It's not, I promise. That's just the accent. But I must admit, I do enjoy the rhythm of American English. It's very bold and energetic.
And I enjoy how British English sounds classy, even when you're just ordering tea.
Funny how language is not just words. It's identity, culture, attitude. The way we speak reflects how we see the world.
Totally. And learning about these differences actually helps us connect more, and like it's fun but also deeply cultural.
I agree. That's why for English learners, we always say, don't just learn words, pay attention to tone, context, culture, and intention behind them.
Exactly. And hey, just pick one accent to learn at first, either British or American, and don't mix them up.
Yes, because saying lorry and sidewalk in the same sentence can confuse both sides.
Totally. All right. So which accent should our listeners learn?
I'd say whichever they enjoy more, but maybe give both a try and see what suits you best.